Jan Hutton, CEO of the Australian Tourism Data Warehouse, has a proud track record delivering sustainable strategies that transform the way organisations work and taking advantage of new business opportunities through the application of digital technologies. And we welcome her back to our panel for today's session.
Thank you for the warm welcome. A little bit about Atdw. I'll keep it concise. We are the only Australian-owned and managed digital tourism platform as a marketplace between operators and distributors. We have just shy of 100,000 operators nationally and are by far the strongest representation of all products, experiences, attractions, events across Australia. And our job is ultimately to drive as many leads, to generate as many bookings, to enable revenue into those operators' businesses. And we do that by building out a distribution strategy. And our distribution strategy at the moment, we have 250 distributors domestically and globally, constantly building it. That includes all government distribution, so through every council, every state tourism body, every regional tourism body, and Tourism Australia, and then private sector, or quasi. Qantas is a distributor of our content, What If through Expedia, etc. So there's a broad variety of distributors, and as I say, our job is to make sure that we build out high quality profiles that have rich content, up-to-date copy that fully describes, it's fully tagged in terms of consumer search, it's fully loaded with a COVID safe plan and accessibility credentials and sustainability, etc. And we fully load that profile and then populate that through our distribution network with the sole purpose of driving the recovery of our sector by optimizing conversion. So, that's the simple version. Obviously, on the back of that, there's a lot of data acquisition and other elements as well.
So we have been talking a lot today about the challenges of working not just across APEC economies, but globally, and particularly as we all share this common problem at the moment of COVID-19. So I'm interested to know, what are the challenges you find of working truly across borders and getting people working together? Are there certain commonalities that you find in ATDW's work?
Yeah, look, I think, as soon as you talk cross borders, there's so many aspects to that. One is literally as simple as relationships, making sure that the right relationships are in place, that they're nurtured, that they're serviced. The lady that was on before me, I thought, just spoke a lot about that, and I love that. Like, we need to remember that we're actually in an industry that is first and foremost about people. I sit on the sharp end of that customer decision journey, and for me, it's all about digital. But whenever you talk about cross-border opportunities, it'll never be about digital collaboration first. It'll start with relationships and then look at how we leverage. And there's such different levels of maturity. So, right from some of the parts of just looking at Australia, for instance, who heavily invested in their MarTech stack, and they've got, state-of-the-art technology, and their data strategies are fairly advanced. And then you've got, other parts of our both from shareholders as well as our distributors that actually aren't very advanced. And you go all the way down to some of our operators. And honestly, the biggest role that we could play is to lobby for internet access. It really comes down to almost the basics of saying, when will NBN be there? Because we know that that's what opens up commercial doors for them. So I would say it starts with relationships, I would say, followed closely by a very clear vision. And sometimes I feel like we, especially in tourism and especially at the moment, we are too quick to say that our challenge is budget, our challenge is resources, and even our challenge is revenue, actually. Our challenge is very often just lack of an inspiring business plan. And I feel like all of the collaborative opportunities that we've been able to engineer over the last little while are all because there's a very clear spearheaded business plan that talks to what our recovery efforts are going to be and how we're going to work cohesively to achieve that. So, it comes down to some of those basics. And ultimately, I guess it also comes down to having a very clear understanding of what survival strategies we want to implement in terms of demand side, because there's a real change in that, and there's a real new level of innovation that's required as we all reinventing. It's a new marketplace. And on the other side, making sure that supply is also innovating and reinventing. It's quite interesting. I was talking to somebody the other day about innovation in their business, and they came up with a line that I love, and they just said, when you talk about innovation, you need to almost understand where your comfort is within that word, because to some people, innovation literally means coming up with, 4 wheels on the bottom of a suitcase, and for other people, it's literally about, space tourism. So innovation is such a diverse word. And practically, if we look at what it means right now in the reality of tourism, sometimes it's actually how are we innovating with the hygiene factors like sanitization practices and how we promote them, and how we're implementing more dynamic pricing and flexible cancellation policies, etc., and promoting that stuff. So I would say one of the things that I'm seeing that really stands out is the kind of go-to-market strategy of a lot of the STOs and operators as well. And there certainly is a real doubling down in niche audiences. And I know that that's not new to any of us, but it's worth remembering that in amazing countries like Belgium developed their entire destination strategy around chocolate and cycling. And they own that space in Europe. And we should be looking at golfing and cooking and epic walks and hikes, and how we can engage new audiences in very specific ways, where we engage them through their influences, their existing forums, in the language that they speak around that passion point, and our conversion will be so much higher. So I'm seeing a lot of the people that we're working with really shift some of their consumer strategies, which changes a lot of what their profile looks like on ATDW as well, obviously.
So I really like that concept of innovation as comfort. It ties in with my thought of, we think of COVID-19 as, quite rightly, the international disaster that it is, but are we also potentially missing an opportunity here? If we think of innovation as comfort, we can also turn COVID-19 on its head, and we discover that many economies are spending more money training people there. I think the uptake of digital has been accelerated massively. There is no question.
Hugely, yeah.
What are the potential opportunities that we could still be maximising?
Oh, total. I just want to say that I really love what you said. And sometimes these are quite sobering words, but I have all the data to back it up, that tourism is such a vital sector. We all know that. Everybody on this call understands the job creation and revenue generation of the power of tourism as a sector. But sometimes I feel like we almost take too much credit. Tourism has succeeded despite us. And now is an opportunity for us to really do that very differently. So there are a lot of opportunities that COVID has forced us to reconsider, or to consider for the first time. Some of them are super simple. Like, one of the things I've been thinking about, Stephen, is we're talking about resources, and access to money right now is really important. And not to get into this in too much detail, but at the moment, the Australian government has an amazingly progressive, excellent grant program out there, and most people just have no idea how to find what grant is available and is most applicable to them. And as simple as that is, one of the things that I'm seeing is starting to emerge on the other side of this is a simplification of knowing what funds are available, what the criteria are, what your specific eligibility is, and how we could fast track small businesses having access to those recovery funds right into the hands of the most appropriate businesses quickly. So, those are some of the things that I would like. It's not a tourism specific thing, but I think it's very relevant to tourism. I also feel that, we all know this. And again, I think I caught the tail end of the previous speaker really reinforcing it. Sorry, I don't know her name. But the key thing is to exist in tourism in 2021 is to exist online. And I've spoken about it a minute ago, but we talk about how government can devise and implement strategies to deliver tools in a fast digitizing world, now more than ever. As you said, it's been accelerated. And for me, that really does start with democratizing access to the internet. I won't get into that in too much detail, but I do think that it's absolutely essential, because when you start looking at ATDW's role at a national level, it's about enabling bookings through fostering digital collaboration. And sometimes it literally hurts me when I see the incredible experiences of products that are rural and that are just not able to participate and get the benefit of visibility to those audiences. The other thing I think is a real opportunity and a bit of a game changer, Stephen, is I feel like there is almost just a dropping of our guard. And what I mean by that is that I think so many tourism businesses have stopped competing on technology and data and really got back to competing on the basis of their own beautiful, distinctive experiences. Yes, the promotion of those experiences is totally enabled by technology. But from a government perspective, we need, again, to democratize visibility, access to customers, access to audiences, access to potential travelers, especially if we want regional tourism to thrive. So for me, this is part of the reason why ATDW is so essential to the Australian tourism industry as part of that fabric, because our sole purpose is to facilitate that in the absence of a lot of smaller businesses having that visibility. But it really does come down. I've seen a new spirit of collaboration around technology, shared licenses, shared platforms, shared projects in development. Absolutely a different appetite around shared data, a lot more open data projects. Data is only relevant when it is contextual. And now for the first time, we're really starting to see that come to the fore. So I think that that's also something that is significant. And the other thing that I'll add is that I do believe that government is providing some really significant tools, some of which are urgently needed now, others which will be needed as soon as there starts being a softening of international borders. But we talk about, for instance, the national voucher programs and how they've driven change behavior and driven key outcomes and had a massive economic impact. There are also translation services, automatic machine learning translation engines that are now available that government has provided to operators. And that allows, your listing, your profile to automatically be translated into 10 languages around the world. And that might not feel relevant today, but very quickly, that's where our eyes will be on the horizon. So, there's a lot more that could be said around booking engines. And I feel fairly strongly that there's a conversation that's brewing at the moment that talks about how could we fiercely guard the revenue of our operators. We don't want to keep pushing 15, 20, up to 30% offshore. We know that over 50% of operators generate under $200,000 annually. And because of the nature of them being so many micro businesses and because of the nature of where we find tourism, it's really important that we have facilitated e-commerce strategies, digital solutions, and the type of tools that I'm talking about. And these are the things that have absolutely been fast-tracked as a result of COVID, as you said, Stephen.
Thanks, Jan. I think we could continue our conversation for much longer, but we are coming up towards the end of our time. I must say, I'm really looking forward to unpacking the 3 days of these sessions and putting them into our final report, which will be available once put together and approved. I think there have been a lot of insights that we've gained over the last 3 days.